Hello, I'm Elizabeth Ward. This is Hillary Wright, and we are the authors of the Menopause Diet Plan. And we're here to talk today about weight control and weight loss because that is the major thing on people's minds, would you say?
It might be a major reason why people buy this book.
Oh,
you know, we're thinking
okay,
because it's I think it's often the menopause associated symptom that gets people's attention the most.
But particularly belly fat. Let's talk belly fat, should we?
Belly fat.
Well,
we just want to prove that we got it, so we know of what we speak.
We know what we're talking about. So, and we gained the belly fat during our late 40s and into our 50s. So,
I'd like to think some of my belly fat is actually stretched out skin from having 3 kids and only being 5'2½".
Okay, well,
am I kidding myself?
Yeah, you can think whatever you want,
okay.
And that's fine. I mean, I'm sure it's from lack of tone. I mean, you have to mention that your skin doesn't stay toned for your whole life.
When you've been stretched to oblivion.
Well, when you've been stretched out, right? Also, but the collagen levels drop as you lose estrogen. So, but
sigh.
Okay. So who on this Facebook Live has an issue with gaining belly fat? Let us know because we're going to answer your questions. And Hillary, explain belly fat to people while I check out the questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I always start this conversation by saying all of us know somebody in our social sphere who doesn't appear to have belly fat through menopause. And so I want to point out the obvious, that some people are genetically blessed, and that's likely part of it. It's not to say that people aren't working hard, but I have this common saying I throw out there that says all it takes is one person in your social circle to look like they're navigating menopause without accumulating any belly fat to make the rest of us feel like we're just not trying hard enough, and that's not true. People come in all shapes and sizes, as Nancy Clark says. We understand that some dogs are labs and some dogs are greyhounds, and I'm definitely a lab. I was before.
Some are low to the ground.
Exactly. I might be a bulldog. I'm not sure.
Or beagle.
Right. So one thing that we know, which is true, is that through menopause, women's estrogen levels decline, and that decline causes a redirection of stored fat to the abdomen. So the interesting thing is, we're really into kind of evolutionary biology. It's, we find that stuff fascinating, and I'm sure there was a kind of a historic reason for doing that. But the reality is that there is a shift in body fat that is largely unavoidable. So I would suggest that even women who don't appear to have more belly fat, if you ask them, they would probably tell you that they do have more than they used to have.
But so why does that happen? I mean, you're doing all this, and we've been through it ourselves. We didn't change our eating. We didn't change our exercise.
Right.
What the heck?
So you have this redirection of body fat to the abdomen in the setting of our muscle mass declining, sadly, over time, with age, with declining estrogen levels. And we always like to point out that this actually starts a lot sooner than people realize. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to start paying attention to this in your early 40s. And, that can be challenging for a lot of women because there are a lot of women, particularly in Massachusetts, we have the oldest first-time mothers in America.
Not us. Not us.
Maybe... yes. I mean, I
40.
see that in my role as a nutritionist in a
she's
fertility
a little
treatment
jaded.
place.
Yeah.
The stuff I see is like, wow,
crazy.
I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah.
But, I think you might still be embroiled in raising children for some women at a time of life where your hormones are starting to slide.
Right.
So research tells us that starting around in the mid-40s, plus or minus, the average woman is gaining about 1.5 pounds a year. And that continues until about 2 or 3 years after menopause. So what we know, sadly, is we can't wait until it's been a year since we had our last period to start thinking about, am I doing all I can to counter that muscle loss, which would be strength training? Am I needing to eat less than I used to?
Yeah. Yes.
And the answer to that is
yes.
Yes. And also, do I need to maybe pay attention to my food distribution? And we can talk more about that. But it's clearly, I guess, the main message is you have to start paying attention much sooner than you realize. But it is certainly something that can be mediated with attention.
So Abby Gelman, and hello to everybody who's on this Facebook Live, by the way, but Abby said, does increased strength training help? And Hillary, basically just said, yeah, it does. And the reason why it helps is because it preserves the muscle that you have, but it also builds muscle. So it's possible to build muscle in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, and even beyond. It gets harder as you get older, so the idea would be to start, like Hillary's saying, start before the day of your last period, when you suddenly go, my body's changed.
Mm-hmm.
We love strength training. You're not going to get muscly, you're not going to get jacked unless you really want to. But along with that, and we talk about this a lot in the book, we have a whole chapter devoted to exercise, and we put protein in there.
Mm-hmm.
We put a special emphasis on protein in that chapter, because there is a lot of research that says that women over the age of 50 need more protein than what the RDA is right
Mm-hmm.
now. So the guidelines, the physical activity guidelines for Americans say strength training at least twice a week, where you work all your muscle groups in a challenging way, though, right?
Yeah, and everybody has to find their own, thing that resonates with them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a gym person, so I prefer to go to a gym where somebody's blasting music and telling me what to do with the free weights and the bands, or to do a TRX class. Though I will say proudly, like many other people who never thought they could exercise in their living room, to YouTube. I've actually done that quite a bit.
Yeah, going to a gym is not
during this pandemic.
I mean, this is why we have our masks on, because going to a gym is not happening.
Let's lower our mask and not talk for 2 seconds.
Okay.
You can see your face. All right.
Okay.
Now we're human. But we are trying to set a good example for social distancing, and we do live in Massachusetts, which is kind of a COVID shit show, even though we're our governor takes it very seriously.
Yeah, but people don't. So that's
Can I say one thing about protein?
Yes.
I think it's important for people to understand when they're figuring out how they're trying to determine how much protein somebody needs. There's a difference between enough to survive and enough to thrive. So the amount that we're talking about, we advocate for in our book, it's not like high carbohydrate, high protein, low carb. It's like balanced with enough emphasis on accepting that we don't utilize protein as efficiently as we get older.
Right.
Which is why they're thinking about bumping up the requirement. And that our body, for muscle maintenance, appears to use it better if you're taking chunks over the day, right?
Right.
Versus if you do what a lot of women do and say, I'm not going to think about it and eat a lot of chicken at dinner.
Yeah, like 6 ounces or 7 ounces of chicken.
Plus, we are talking about weight loss too, so we started out talking about belly fat, and protein is satiating. It kind of makes you feel fuller longer. So there's lots of reasons to, we're not talking about you have to, go crazy on protein. We're saying you need to pay attention to it, because we think a lot of women don't pay enough attention to it.
No, they don't. And we know from years of counseling that, there's a little teeny bit at breakfast, if that, a little bit more at lunch and a lot at dinner. And Leslie asked a great question about how much protein and what's the distribution. We like at least 20 grams of protein at every single meal, and we also like it in snacks. So, we want to be, the idea there is to be feeding your body all day long the raw materials that it needs to make, the muscle, the other lean tissue, all the other things that your body needs, right? To support your immune system.
Now, immune system, people are really into that. They want to know what supplements should I be popping.
Right.
In reality, supporting your immune system is pretty much what
protein.
we put in the book.
Yeah, it's about
a plant-based
protein
diet, getting
too.
more protein and exercising and feeding, fiber to your microbiome, which is an important part of your immune system.
Yeah, so it always comes back to a balanced diet, which doesn't sound like so sexy. Like, you want to know like the 1 or 2 things that's going to help you, build muscle or whatever, and that's going to be the solution. And it isn't. It's about balance. But Leslie did also ask about the amount. Anywhere between 1 and 1.2 grams of protein per day is what we suggest in the book after doing our homework, lots and lots of homework. We found that that's, a much bigger percentage, jump over what the current recommended dietary allowance is, which is quite frankly outdated. But I think we're going to say protein for another one because it's just so fascinating. Now, Janice asked about what can we do to keep our bones strong.
The interesting thing is, it's a lot of this stuff is the same stuff. Strength training, of course, is important because if you're exerting your bones, you're telling your bones they need to retain their strength.
Right.
Not being vitamin D deficient is really important. Right now, we're in the depths of vitamin D synthesis here in the Boston area.
We're making none. We make none.
In fact, I often tell my patients right now is a good time to get serious about taking vitamin D. Like, test your dose in March because people's vitamin D levels are the lowest in March.
Test your blood levels.
Your blood levels. And lowest in March, highest in August. Well, that's because we're supposed to make vitamin D from sun exposure.
From the sun exposure,
But we don't run around naked, close to the equator, year-round anymore. So
that would be no good.
No. So this is actually the perfect time because you probably need to be on a certain dose for, a couple months anyway to get a sense of what does that do for my blood level.
Yeah.
So if you get serious about it now, take your dose and have it tested around March. It tells you without any meaningful contribution from sunlight, this amount of vitamin D gives me this level. And I'm going to let you talk about calcium.
Okay. Well, you could talk about it too, but sure, getting enough calcium once you hit 50, supposedly that's a magic age when your calcium absorption ability goes down. So they prescribe more. So you just throw more calcium at the problem and hope, that works. So your calcium needs are 1,200 milligrams a day, which is basically 4 glasses of milk. We know women do not, get most of their calcium from milk. I don't get enough calcium during the day, so I take half as a supplement. I also take vitamin D. I take about 1,000 international units a day. How many micrograms is that?
25. Everybody,
dietitians
know this. Dietitians know this, but international units are fading away on labels.
What are they?
So now vitamin D labels will say 25 micrograms in addition to 1,000 IUs, but beware, eventually the IUs are going away.
So anyway, the other thing about bone health that a lot of people don't consider is that a diet that is rich in plants is very good for your bones. So you want the minerals, the potassium, the magnesium, all these minerals that are in plants, foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, work to support your bone strength. So, and so does protein. Again, I'm not harping on it, but your bones are made of protein. There's protein inside. You have to have enough protein in your diet. So, again, it's like the dream team, really, of nutrients that help your bones. It's not just calcium. It's not just vitamin D, although those are the ones that there's so much buzz about. It's really a balanced plant-based diet and regular physical activity.
We can't emphasize enough the importance of you need to push on your bones to tell your bones they need to stay strong. So I think a lot of women think, I'm just going to pop my calcium, my vitamin D, and my bones are going to be fine. That's only part of the equation. And, again, the strengthening thing and the building of the muscles, it also, supports your bones and your joints.
Right.
So they're not getting completely ground down all the time. So muscle, I even noticed my gym was just closed for 3 weeks, and I definitely kind of felt my knees a little walking up the stairs, which I normally don't.
Yeah,
kind of scary.
You're exercising your quads all the time and your hamstrings and you're supporting everything. It doesn't take long to lose it, and it doesn't take much to get into it either. No one's saying that you have to join a gym and go 5 days a week or 7 days a week, like once this COVID thing is over and we can all go back to the gym. Put your sneakers on, go out for a walk. If you haven't walked in ages, no problem. Do a 10-minute walk. Just do it. So exercise is really important for your bones and for your mental health. That's why Hillary and I do it, and that's why we try to get outside to do it as much as possible. But it doesn't, it burns calories, but it isn't something that you and I, even in the book, say, you really need to exercise a lot to control your weight. Like, we don't put it up there that high.
No, I think, we like to focus on all the other reasons. I mean, women tend to hyper-focus on the value of exercise, is to burn calories.
Yeah.
And, okay, so
Is
that's
it?
part of it, I guess.
Yeah.
But that is, I mean, when I counsel my clients about diabetes prevention, when I counsel my cancer patients on survivorship, I never talk about it as a calorie burner. Everybody knows that, they've got that in the back of their head, but I'm talking about it as something that will help regulate the blood sugar, will help lower your insulin levels, which is good for cancer survivorship and diabetes prevention. Like, I am, we're huge fans of dressing up old messages in a new outfit. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we're good at that.
I mean, who wants to listen to calories in, calories out? Plus, we know it's not that simple.
No, it's not that simple, and that brings up the perfect point about dieting or weight loss. Say you have gained some pounds in your 40s and your early 50s, and you want to take off the weight. Well, what Hillary and I always say, now that we know we've lived it ourselves, see, that's the other thing. We've lived this.
Right.
And we know that it's not just about the calories in and the calories out, it's about the quality of the calories. So you speak to that, because you're very good at talking about, what type of calories you should be eating.
Well, so one thing that we know for sure is that as people age, and that includes women obviously, we're more prone to being insulin resistant. And if somebody's got some insulin resistance going on, that means they have higher than probably perfect levels of circulating insulin. And insulin is all about storing fat.
So insulin's a hormone.
Insulin's a growth hormone. That means it makes
Yeah.
cells grow. So, and it actually likes to store fat in your belly. So we've kind of come full circle.
Here we go.
So, I think it's important to point out, insulin follows glucose, and glucose largely comes from carbohydrates, but also, insulin's affected by other things. But a lot of people will hear that and say, oh, insulin's bad, glucose in the blood is bad, then carbs are bad.
Keto!
Absolutely not. It's like, keto, touchdown.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, keto, I'm done. That's perfect.
Not it.
No.
So, kind of this balanced plate that we have in our book, and, plant-based eating, which, we always clarify, as I know a lot of dietitians do, that it does not mean you need to be a vegetarian.
Not meat-free, not dairy-free.
No.
If you want to be, that's fine. We'll help you do that.
Right. But if you're, our body, I always say when you take a carbohydrate from nature and you process it into something else before you even eat it, you're kind of like pre-digesting it. There's that much less work your body has to do on the inside. So your glucose levels are likely to rise faster, and where your blood sugar goes, your insulin levels go.
Yeah, because there's no fiber, right? I mean,
right.
So if you drink, we give juice to people who have diabetes, who are having a low blood sugar, right? So think about it. If you're drinking juice, that means right away we're going to take that person back up to a normal blood glucose level. That means that in us, it's going to keep our blood glucose levels higher too, which means that there's going to be more insulin in our bloodstream trying to clear it. We're always trying to stay in balance and normal. Mm-hmm. So, to Hillary's point, we have cut a lot of, junk and refined carbs out of our plan, but it's not a low carb plan.
No. I mean, the other thing too is you eat a lot of refined carbohydrates, you're likely to be hungrier sooner.
Uh-huh. Right.
So again, we're circling back to the belly fat. We need to be aware of calories. They do matter as part of the equation. And if you want to, by the time your head hits the pillow, be reasonable in the calorie zone, then you want to try to eat foods that are going to be more satiating for longer. And that, hopefully will help you enter your next meal or snack, maybe hungry but not starving. So plant foods take longer to digest because they contain elements that are challenging to our digestive tract. So, dietary fiber, humans can't digest it. You have to be a ruminant like a goat or a cow and have like 4 stomachs. We don't have 4 stomachs, we have 1. So that means
I feel like I have 4 stomachs.
I'm talking about the internal one.
Internal. Oh, okay.
The one that's
the way it's
attached to
set
your
up internally. Okay.
At the bottom of your esophagus.
All right.
So our body has to sift through the fiber, kind of contend with it, so the glucose will go into your blood, more gradually.
Mm-hmm.
And then, most importantly, that fiber sticks around in your GI tract, travels down, creates some bulk and feeds that healthy bacteria
Yep.
in your gut. So we now realize that our gut microbiome is a really important part of weight management. In fact, I don't think I told you this.
Oh.
I had a patient in my private practice who had a really bad intestinal infection called C. diff,
Ugh,
which is really hard
the
to clear.
worst.
And she ended up having, and this is going to sound gross, again,
Get
dietitians,
ready, gorge yourself.
a fecal transplant.
Oh,
So they are
yeah,
now doing
that's
this
in the
now, where
news.
they're taking kind of donated fecal
Healthy, so-called healthier
microbiome,
microbiome material from the
GI tract of a healthy person
Yeah.
who doesn't have C. diff.
right.
So she had this bacterial fecal transplant, and she said in the 6 or 9 months after she had this, she gained 30 pounds.
Oh, so this person had that.
No, they think that might be possible.
Yeah.
Have any of you dietitians heard this? That if you
Yeah.
get a fecal transplant from
Yeah,
somebody
watch
who's
out.
overweight,
Right.
because we now know that this
That
microbiome is
it's
like a fingerprint, and you just absorb somebody
It's
else's
fascinating, and there's so much that we don't know, and it's a community that lives in your colon, and it's not bad, even though it's your colon, and you think, oh, gross, dirty germs. No, they're beneficial bacteria, and what Hillary's saying is comes from this healthy person who doesn't have C. diff, thank God, into the other person who does. But not having C. diff, gaining 30 pounds might be.
I mean, she said that her clinical team actually told her that might be what was
Well, they
contributing
should
to
go
her
back. I
weight
wonder
gain.
if they can go back and look who the donor
I
is.
don't
But anyway,
know.
so our point is that you've got to keep your gut healthy.
Because
or whatever.
it is potentially involved in weight management.
Right.
And
And
it sounds weird, but it's
it
true.
does sound weird, and we're not exactly sure how it works. But it's like every day there's an onslaught of stuff for us to read about it and to try to make sense of it. But really, basically, eating enough fiber is very important. Our plan is higher in fiber than what most people eat, and what most women
what's
I think are
really
eating.
terrifying? I was talking to my husband about this the other day, when all this stuff that we're not sure why seemingly healthy people sometimes are really going down the tubes with these COVID infections.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if down the road they tied in some sort of aspect of the microbiome.
Yeah, why
And I
not?
was telling him,
Yeah.
people should be eating, 14 grams per 1,000 calories?
Yeah, so
about
it's about
25.
let's say we like people to get about 30. because
25 to 30 grams
Yeah.
a day. But the
At
I think
least.
the average person gets 11 or 12 grams
11
of
or
fiber.
12. That's average.
Now, if I was at
Yeah.
Dana-Farber and somebody, some doctor said to me, this patient needs to be on a low fiber diet, that's about 10 or 11 grams.
Oh God! So everyone's on a low fiber diet.
It's
you
very
know,
scary.
it's very, very important.
Because those plant foods bring along phytonutrients and all kinds of other important
mean,
stuff. We're like missing the boat
yeah.
on the
so
plant foods, which is why we have a lot of encouragement of plant-based eating.
shameless self promotion.
Absolutely.
But really, it's not like you have to think about fiber and count fiber. If you just follow what we're asking you to follow, it's in there. So it's already in there. So we only have 7 minutes left.
Are there real questions?
Yeah. No, I keep checking them.
Okay.
Okay.
With the right eyeball.
Yes, they're right. Yeah. Okay. I can even read them without my glasses on, so it's great. So talk about timing. Talk about why we don't recommend eating after dinner. This is a big one, and people are probably not going to focus for this.
So I always preface this conversation by saying there's always going to be people who appear to be able to do everything, and it doesn't seem to affect their weight or whatever. However, there is a emerging body of evidence to suggest, and it makes sense. Again, if you go back to the caveman model,
caveman, the cave
we
woman.
are the cave woman model.
Cave
We
woman.
are the products of evolution. After all,
Right.
evolution is super slow. It takes 10,000 years of being exposed to a different environment for our body to actually get it and operate differently.
Yeah.
So prior to Thomas Edison and electricity, the sun went down, the campfire went out, and people weren't hunting and gathering. So metabolically, many of us appear to be genetically kind of wired to be more sensitive to insulin and, kind of more efficiently metabolize some things if we're doing it predominantly or more in the sun-up time of day. So our ancestors had to kind of hunt, gather, eat, store leftover calories while the sun was up, and then during the sundown phase, those calories would come out of storage, so there was no net gain.
Yeah.
But if for many of us, and this is probably more true for people at risk of diabetes and all that. If we're throwing a lot of food into our body at night when the sun is down, it's likely that we may need to produce more insulin to regulate that same amount of food because our cells don't use insulin as effectively when the sun is down.
Right.
And when you think about how we live now, we're a population of escalating eaters. You know, I mean, how many times have we been
Escalating, you mean during the day?
like our food escalates as the day
During
goes
the
on.
day, yeah.
During the day, so we're either too busy or I'm not a breakfast person.
Uh-huh.
If you skip breakfast often enough, of course you're not going to be hungry for it.
Right.
And then you're likely to overeat at night, and of course you don't want breakfast. So we could talk about what leads to that.
Yeah.
But that shifting of our eating pattern that wasn't historically typical, likely is also affecting how much insulin you need to regulate your blood sugar. Remember, insulin's job is to help
Store
people
fat.
Insulin is an anti-starvation hormone. It's going to try to move glucose out of your blood and into your cells, but your cells will take on what they need. Shut the door. The insulin's going to say, where else can I shove it? And it's going to say, I'm going to turn it into
Shove
fat.
it in your fat cells, right?
Well,
right.
Convert it into triglycerides
Right.
and store it. And
Where
when
do
you want to
you think
store
it's
it,
going? It's
your
so.
belly.
So anyway, so the thing I always like to say about people who eat after dinner is they always say, I'm just not hungry for breakfast. And I used to say to my clients, I am not surprised because you eat about 1,000 calories between dinner and then the snacking, and then you stay up and watch the late show or whatever. And you get up in the morning, you're probably not going to be hungry. So to help people with this, I mean, I think initially we don't say go cold turkey and never eat, after dinner.
Just
You have to just gradually cut back, maybe by a quarter or half even, and see how you feel in the morning. And so what we want to get people to do is get on a more regular schedule so that they're eating the bulk of their calories. I mean, we don't always do this. I would love to do this, but I think sometimes when you have a family, it's not possible.
I work 2 long days too.
Yeah,
so
I mean-
would be the first to say I'm not eating dinner a lot of times until 7.
But that's okay, but you're not eating after dinner.
No.
You know what I mean? And so when we talk about this in the book about giving your body like a 10 to 12 hour rest with no food, but most of the time you're sleeping most of that time. So
Hopefully.
anyway, so Janice said, this one last thing we're going to talk about is Janice's remark about, I love a snack in the evening since I don't sleep well if I'm hungry. Yeah, who sleeps well if they're hungry? I mean, I've woken up hungry, you've woken up hungry in the middle of the night. It's rare because, I don't
We eat too
usually
much.
skip dinner. So,
I mean, there's a
You know,
difference
it-
between, chowing down processed food in front of the
Yeah.
TV mindlessly
Ben
and
and
having like
Jerry's.
some cheese and crackers before you go to bed.
right. And
Or
again,
some peanut butter on a piece of toast. So, I mean, there's a quality and quantity issue.
if
for sure.
that's your pattern, okay. If your pattern is what Hillary just described, which is really eating a lot after dinner up until the time you go to bed, that's a totally different thing. We're not saying we have the answers for everybody. We're just saying from a pattern, of eating patterns that we know about and what we know about insulin and what we know personally that it's better if you don't.
Well,
eat
yeah, I mean,
at
and
night.
these are all, we encourage people to think of these as just things to consider.
Right.
Particularly if you are like many women who really aren't sure what's affecting their weight. So you look at,
Right.
how much protein am I eating? If I eat more, will I feel more satiated? In fact, I had a patient just yesterday tell me she started doing that, and she feels so much better throughout the day. She's not crazy. Maybe, if you can eat at night and there are no health consequences for you, that's fine.
Right. I mean, this has
they're
to
just
be, yeah.
considerations and things to be aware of that could be affecting the big picture.
And one more thing, we cannot leave without talking about alcohol calories. Like you were saying,
Yes.
women who are perplexed about, their weight gain or why they can't lose weight, please take a look at how much alcohol you're drinking. A mixed drink could have 400 or 500 calories. The other thing is that, a glass of wine, our definition of a glass of wine, which is not ours, it's the expert's definition, but it's in our book, may not be your definition of a glass of wine, and so you could be getting 200 or 300 calories more a day from alcohol. And we're just asking you to look at that if you're perplexed.
And just be aware if it affects your inhibition around food.
Yeah.
But it's worth pointing out again during this pandemic, there's evidence to suggest it's a thing. you know, women are drinking more, or people are drinking more in general, and we need to be aware of the overall
And
health
believe me,
consequences.
we're
not teetotalers.
We're not teetotalers. We're just saying, if you're perplexed, you know, look at all these things. Eating after night, after dinner, not eating enough during the day. And with that, we're going to end. And we thank you for watching. And please leave us in the notes your thoughts about any other topics you want to see covered soon. We have so many ideas.
And let's just lower our mask one more time, smile, and wave back.
Bye.